Hey everyone, JT Viper here, and I'm back with, as the title of this video would indicate, another episode of the Regressive Handbook. Today we'll be observing Dr. Bassem Youssef, MD, as he skims over the finer and not so fine points of American gun culture on his way to the narrative that Fusion's looking for. Let's lock and load. Alright, so I'm hoping that most of you will have seen my video on Texas's new campus carry law. But if not, let me sum up my view on American gun culture as succinctly as possible. It's my opinion that the United States has maintained a particular attitude regarding firearm ownership for a sufficient length of time to render the hopes of any silver bullet solution completely impossible. Now, I believe that the United States, in general, lacks a certain requisite reverence for guns, and it is this lack of respect and absence of a well-established citizens' knowledge base about firearm myths and facts that has led to the problems we see today. Since this problem cannot be fixed overnight, but so many American citizens are already armed, certain steps need to be taken to better enable citizens to defend themselves as required. But enough of the rambling about guns. I'll save that for a future video. On with the narrative crafting antics of Bassem Youssef on behalf of Fusion.
America has long been called the land of equal opportunity. Everyone here has the same chance for success. It's such a beautiful thing.
The wealthy get wealthier, the poor get poorer.
Ron Paul. Okay, the man who said that to him, quote, "To be a good conservative means to conserve the good parts of America and to conserve our Constitution," end quote. Funny that you'd use him in a video that calls into question the validity of the Second Amendment, seeing as that's part of the whole Constitution and whatnot.
The CEO's making 204 times what the average worker is making.
And would you care to expand for me on just how much more the CEO is responsible for compared to the so-called average worker? I hear this a lot from people flipping burgers at McDonald's about how the CEOs make so many times more than they do. But these same people never mention the disparity in responsibility between getting someone's Big Mac order right and keeping a multinational corporation running smoothly in order to maintain the employment of hundreds, if not thousands of people.
Bringing the wealth gap to its highest point in 30 years.
Yes, but what is all too often overlooked is the average person in today's society has it far better off than they did 30 years ago regarding the standards of things like healthcare, the amount of available information to them, the opportunities to find work given that one could become so inclined as to choose a meaningful field of study in college or get into an in-demand trade. Seriously, capitalism has brought up the bottom of the barrel, not kept it down.
Or maybe not. But there's one thing that makes everyone equal in America. Whether you are this guy or this guy, everyone can get a gun.
Oh, of course. So long as you are of legal age, sound mental state at the time of purchase, you're not inebriated at the time of purchase, the particular dealer doesn't happen to just get an off vibe about you and use personal discretion to refuse to sell, you pass a background check and file all of the correct paperwork through your local federal firearms licensed dealer, yeah, of course you can get a gun. Oh, and I almost forgot, not doing so would mean that you're in violation of the law, and getting caught with an unregistered firearm nets you jail time. But hey, anyone can get a gun, right?
In the Middle East, only police, soldiers, militias, and terrorists have guns. Guns are hard to come by for regular citizens, which is why we usually just throw rocks at each other. It's not a perfect solution, but it's all we've got. But here, you are loaded with guns. 300 million guns in the hands of civilians. That's almost one gun for every American. Maybe it's because there are so many ways to get a gun here. Online, through private sales, and even at your local Walmart, which is the biggest gun seller in the US.
I'm just glad no one told these ladies about the shotguns 2 aisles over.
Okay, so a number of points here. Audience, please bear with me. This is going to take a bit. Bassem, you should really stop drawing so much attention to the shithole of a country that you came from. Remember, they chased you out because they didn't like the jokes you were making. Ever heard of making someone look better by comparison? You're like that ugly girl standing next to like the sort of kind of attractive chick at the party, but all of a sudden she's like a perfect 10 because you're like you don't want to go home with that girl who's hanging around at last call. Anyway, point 2. 300 million guns is an accurate statement. Won't argue it. But it bodes noting, as we'll see later in this video, that many gun owners are collectors who own multiple firearms. Unfortunately, Bassem's phrasing would make it seem like every man, woman, and child is packing heat. 3. Yes, you can order a gun online, but it has to be shipped to your local federally licensed dealer, where you then go to fill out all the same paperwork, including a background check, that you would have to do if just buying it in store or at a gun show. All the same sort of thing. 4. Demonizing the private sales of firearms by representing such transaction as a criminal act is disingenuous, and frankly, considering I'm a Canadian and even I know this shit, Bassem, that's gotta be downright insulting to the intelligence of the average American. The private sales of guns are similar, in a way, to the private sale of a car. The buyer still needs to register the item under their name, and they need to be of legal age to make that purchase. Also, if they go to register the firearm and there are any conditions that would otherwise prohibit them from owning a gun, say like a criminal conviction, then their registration wouldn't be allowed to go through, resulting in them owning that firearm being a crime. And then we have number 5. Yeah, because of course those shotguns are going to be loaded, and these two brawling cows are going to understand how to load and operate a shotgun. Stop being so goddamn petty.
But all those ways to get a gun are so uninspired. I want to buy a gun in a more festive atmosphere. A place with all of the bells and whistles, bullets, artillery, assault rifles, big guns, little guns. Oh my god, are those Girl Scout cookies?
Bassem, do you even know what an assault rifle is? What artillery is? Do you understand these things, or are you just pulling them out of your ass? Wait, what am I saying? Of course you're just pulling them out of your ass. As you said, before coming to America, you would have had essentially no first-hand firearm exposure. Just so you know, an assault rifle must be capable of select fire, meaning having 2 different firing modes. It must fire a cartridge that carries more power than a pistol, but less than a standard rifle or battle rifle. It must have its ammunition supplied by a detachable box magazine, and it must have an effective range of at least 300 meters. That's 330 yards for the Yanks in my audience. By this definition, the official definition, the vast majority of rifles sold in the US cannot be accurately labeled as assault rifles, since the manufacturing and sale of fully automatic firearms requires very specific and hard-to-obtain licenses. Alright, I could go on forever sniping away at your mistakes, but I don't want to bore my audience to death. Can we move along here, Bassem?
As long as you're of age, you've never done more than 1 year in jail, you're not deemed crazy or drunk at the time of purchase, getting a gun in America is a breeze. Especially at gun shows, which happened every weekend everywhere in America with stuff for the whole family. Moms, kinky moms, babies, hyperactive preteens, and even something for your anti-Semitic uncle.
What most people won't know is that many gun owners are actually amateur historians, or at least collectors of historical memorabilia. The two interests go hand in hand as the modern era of human history has been dictated by the gun. In this case, you've rather obviously sought out the one small table holding any form of either historical or replica Nazi propaganda to set a particular tone. I wonder what the reaction would have been had you shown something like, oh, I don't know, pink ammo pouches and a Hello Kitty Glock instead.
How many guns do you have?
I have 8.
8 guns.
I have a shit ton of guns. I spend all my UFC money on guns.
I have one 22 and one 20 gauge.
Okay, so you've got your typical good old boy, a hyped up UFC fan, and what appears to be your very typical suburban woman who rather astutely owns a 22 caliber firearm and a 20 gauge shotgun, which are both calibers known to have significantly less recoil than their counterparts. If she's purchased these for personal or home defense, I'd say that she has a great choice here, as 22 pistols are very easily concealable and allow for larger magazine capacities, and a 20 gauge shotgun, which, having less stopping power than a 12 or 10 gauge, is going to be much easier for her to operate in or around her home. I think it's really important to note here that I may be profiling a bit with this lady, presuming that it may be a 22 caliber handgun as opposed to, say, a 22 rifle. But even if it's not, even if it is just a rifle and she's using these for like hunting or sports shooting, you're looking at an individual who's obviously taken into account the recoil, the cost, all the different aspects of purchasing a firearm, and has acquired two firearms that are going to be very easy for her to operate. This is not somebody who seems to have made a snap judgment or an impulse buy.
Americans bought over 1.7 million guns in September 2015 alone. But why? What do you use your gun for?
Mainly just target shooting.
I'm a hunter.
Personal defense.
It's about having the right to protect yourself against another human being or animal, or like crazy bears that come at you and stuff like that. Like, it's all legal.
We have the freedoms now. Why mess with our Constitution?
There's the real reason that you Americans love your firearms.
Okay, no, just no. Not the real reason that Americans, on average, appreciate their firearms. You just showed the response of half a dozen people, and you got things ranging from sports shooting to utilitarian hunting to personal defense to maintaining the ability to defend their constitutional rights and freedoms. Those don't sound like terrible reasons to me.
And it stems from this centuries-old sentence.
You know what's also a centuries-old sentence? We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That's a centuries-old sentence, and I'd say it's a damned fine one. Sorry to burst your bubble, but just because something is old doesn't mean it's necessarily wrong, useless, or outdated.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed.
Please note, the Second Amendment does not specify who ought to be the regulatory body of any given militia, simply that a well-regulated militia is necessary in order to preserve a free state. While it leaves that portion slightly ambiguous, and therefore up to individual interpretation and to Supreme Court interpretation, which has upheld the citizens' right to own firearms, it makes it very clear that the right to the people shall not be infringed. The whole militia bit is really just a bit of a flourish. It's a point of note attached to a much more concrete statement. Either way, I feel like I'm beating up on the spastic kid in the class at this point. So let's move on and hopefully get this video over with sooner rather than later.
What is the Second Amendment?
The right to bear arms.
It's like a birthright.
Think of it as the armor for the Constitution, the Bill of Rights.
Is that your favorite amendment?
Probably, yeah.
What is your second favorite amendment?
Probably the First Amendment.
Yeah.
What's the First Amendment?
I forgot.
Yeah.
Oh, come the fuck on, Bassem. How long were you out there just waiting for this gem of a soundbite? How many people did you have to interview? I'll bet a few, when asked why the Second Amendment is so important, explain that it's necessary to protect all the other rights included in the Constitution from the encroachment of a tyrannical government seeking to unreasonably restrict the liberties of the American citizenry. You yourself hail from a nation that has undergone plenty of civil unrest, with rebellions attempting to rise up against the oppressive regimes, and yet they fail. Why? Could it be, perhaps, due to the point you yourself noted at the start of this video, that it's only the army, the police, and outlaw groups who own firearms in Egypt, hence why you have to settle for chucking stones at one another? It might be something to consider.
But what makes Americans love this particular constitutional right so much? I think it's the bargains. In America, when you buy a gun, you can get a free duffel bag. Discounts on hearing aids, medical coverage, hotels, rental cars, frozen yogurt, not valid outside of Utah, and even the most precious commodity of all, pizza.
All they have to do is show me that they're carrying a weapon and they can get the discount.
I wonder if that applies to stuffed crust. Doesn't matter.
Bassem, you're out of line. Of course it matters if it applies to stuffed crust. What are you, nuts? Shit, here I thought you were the one hell-bent on asking the tough questions and getting to the heart of the important issues. Okay, on a more serious note, the webpage he was showing at the start of this segment in the show, yeah, that was an NRA membership benefits page. You know, like how you can get discounts and whatnot from a CAA membership. You pay your dues to the organization, and through deals brokered with different group sponsors, or just offered by businesses who want to bring in more customers, you get discounts on products and services. Everything else here has been very similar to that sponsorship concept, but on a microeconomic scale, focused on individual transactions rather than on influencing large groups.
Only 5 states have laws banning open carry for handguns, so fingers crossed, this pizza trend will catch on. But there are other bargains out there for those in the market for big-ticket items.
Okay, this is where things start to get ridiculous. Basically, Bassem drops in at a hybrid gun shop jewelry store where they have certain combination sales for occasions like Valentine's Day and anniversaries. You know, occasions where someone might want to pick up something for themselves, but may also need to mitigate the spousal eye-rolling at the new gun purchase with a shiny new piece of jewelry. Hey, it's hard to get mad about hubby's new shotgun when he's just handed you a 5-diamond anniversary ring.
It's funny, in the Middle East there are real incentives for gun ownership. Getting in good with a new dictator or, just staying alive. But you guys not only get guns, they come with cool accessories. Still, there's a downside. In America, there were over 53,000 incidents of gun violence last year. In fact, 43 shootings were carried out by, are you ready? Toddlers. Your streets, backyards, and living rooms are like the Arab Spring every day. I might be safer back in Egypt.
That's it. I'm going to say what I think we're all thinking right now. Bassem, maybe you should go back to Egypt. Like, now. Before some toddler waddles up and randomly pops a cap in your ass. Seriously though, in a country with a population just shy of 319 million people, some shit's gonna happen. Is it terrible that there are irresponsible people who don't secure their guns properly? Absolutely. But why don't you talk about the cases of gun violence that resulted in lives saved? Yeah, in case you hadn't realized, a case of gun violence is not the same as an incident of gun-related crime. An incident of gun violence may be a shopkeeper pulling a gun on someone trying to rob them, or a woman drawing a gun on her would-be rapist. Yes, gun violence and gun deaths include homicides, but you haven't mentioned how many deaths from guns occurred in a shooting where an illegal firearm was used, or how many of them were suicides. It's a horrible thing that suicide plays a part in undermining your attempt at crafting a narrative here, but hey, you're the guy stacking the pins, I'm just the one bowling them down. So, there you have it, folks. Another episode of the Democracy Handbook series from Fusion in the bag. Before I end this episode of the Regressive Handbook, however, I'd like to point out a couple of things. I really don't think it's fair how so many responsible gun owners are maligned by the media in the United States and around the world. One of my best friends is the proud owner of multiple firearms, which he uses for sport shooting at private ranges. He's not a psychopath, he's not going around forcing other people to get guns or mocking them because they don't own any. And he's just going about his thing, customizing his firearms to better fit his desired outcome and, for a more comfortable handling experience and improved accuracy when he's out at the range. Are there wackos out there who slip through the cracks and get a hold of firearms when they shouldn't? Sure. As I've said in the past, my grandfather always said that a locked door only keeps out an honest man. So the people who truly want to get a gun for nefarious purposes, well, they're going to get one. And when they do, if you've disarmed all the citizens and the police aren't already on scene, what happens when that wacko opens fire and no one around is even anywhere capable of defending themselves with equal force? Anyway, that's enough for my little rant there. I hope you've enjoyed this episode of the Regressive Handbook as presented by me, JT Viper. And if you have enjoyed it, I would encourage you to hit the like button, leave me a comment, or even subscribe if you'd like to be updated when I upload the next installment in the series. The next one's going to be based on Fusion's next handbook title, One Trump to Rule Them All. Oh yeah, it's going to be a good one. Stay tuned for more, everybody. As always, this has been another episode of the Regressive Handbook. Have a good one.